is the oldest one is a question a lot of the Doctor Who fandom has been asking over the last few days, and while we don't have any definitive answers for this mysterious character, there have been theories galore for who it might be. And in today's video, I just want to go over some of the likely candidates and give my thoughts for who I would like to see in Russell's brand new pantheon of gods. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, and before we get into it, if you could just subscribe, it would be greatly appreciated. We are trying to get to 25,000 subscribers as quickly as possible, and thank you so much for the support over the last few days. It really has been insane. Doctor Who is back, and I'm doing regular content, baby. You can't stop me. So subscribe if you're new and you enjoy that stuff, and let's just get right into it. So one of the most common theories I've heard for who the oldest one might be is in fact the Trickster. Now, the Trickster originally originates from the Sarah Jane Adventures, a spin-off series starring old companion of the Doctor, Sarah Jane. And his whole deal was basically making deals with people and changing the events of time in ways that would basically mess up the flow of time and allow for bad things to happen, mostly revolving around Sarah Jane. There's 3 stories in total, including Whatever Happened to Sarah Jane, The Temptation of Sarah Jane Smith, and The Wedding of Sarah Jane. In each one, he basically changes an event that causes massive ripple effects and allows for chaos to continue. And I think there's a few reasons why this theory is so prominent. The first one, rather simply, is that if you look at the hooded figure that we see in the Space Babies flashback, with its bony finger and hooded self, it does look very reminiscent to the original Trickster design. But I think the more conclusive bit of evidence that people latch onto is the idea that he was a member of a group called the Pantheon of Discord. No, not the social media app, a group of gods whose sole goal it was to cause chaos. And I mean, the Toymaker and the Maestro very much fit that mould. And what has the group of gods we've seen so far been described as? The Pantheon. Now yes, usually a pantheon is just a word to describe a group of separate gods, but that word particularly does hold quite a bit of weight among Doctor Who fans because of its association to the Trickster. It wouldn't even be the first time a Trickster would get involved in the companion's past in order to change events. In Whatever Happened to Sarah Jane Smith, he makes it so that she has a childhood accident instead of her best friend Angela, leading to Sarah Jane no longer existing and a meteor hurtling towards the Earth, with no one to stop it. So is it possible that Ruby Sunday was planted by the Trickster as a trap for the Doctor? Possibly. Another interesting fact about the Pantheon of Discord that I've seen people bring up is that apparently members of the Pantheon of Discord are one of the few groups in the Doctor Who universe with the ability to break the fourth wall. This would include characters like the Maestro, but also the Doctor, which leads to another interesting question of whether the Doctor himself is in fact a member of the Pantheon, or maybe was in a past life. As we know, the Timeless Child leads to him having many prior lives prior to the ones we know. Could they go even further with this and suggest that the reason the Doctor was adopted to begin with was because of the Trickster? Possibly, possibly not. But it is a very, very fun theory. And what adds a bit more credibility to this theory is back when Russell T Davies was discussing the 14th Doctor, he made it very clear that this Doctor wasn't a trick or a trap, he was a fully fledged incarnation, but he specifically said it wasn't a trick by like the Trickster.
He is the 14th Doctor. Because he's not a trick Doctor, he's not a pretend Doctor, he's not a dupe, he's not a plan by the Trickster or something, he is genuinely the 14th Doctor.
So the fact that the Trickster was very much on the mind of Russell T Davies, even as far back as last year, indicates that it's entirely possible he might like to do something with the character again. As a massive fan of the Sarah Jane Adventures, I would personally love to see the Trickster come back. The only real problem with it is that the Trickster was penned in episodes by Gareth Roberts, and Gareth Roberts is a little bit of a contentious figure in the Doctor Who world due to his views on trans people. I don't really want to get into that, but obviously, given Russell T Davies' stances on trans people, it seems kind of unlikely that he'd want to give Gareth Roberts money, I'm assuming because he created the Trickster. He might not have done, I know for a fact he wrote them, so I'm not really sure what the rights issue with the Trickster there is. I know that in a lot of the classic show, the person who wrote the story often retained the rights to the certain villains, so that's why, for example, the Terry Nation estate still technically owns the Daleks, and they get to decide what they appear in and what they don't. There's actually a really famous instance of Looney Tunes back in action using the Daleks, and them really not being happy about it. So the rights thing could be a potential barrier to a Trickster return, but I would love to see the Trickster come back. Given his cosmic power and ability to completely rewrite time, it would make sense to me that even the Maestro could be afraid of him, Not to mention it could explain things like why the TARDIS is malfunctioning. If the timeline is changing, it would explain why the TARDIS isn't reacting very well and perhaps is getting more violent and volatile. Our second candidate is Hecuba, otherwise known as the Queen of Time. Now, what's interesting about the Queen of Time is that she was from an unmade story from the Second Doctor era that has the same name, that was then further adapted into a Big Finish story. She is essentially, from what I can tell, the sister of the Toymaker, therefore the aunt of the Maestro, and, as the title suggests, basically has the ability to control time. While the Toymaker liked playing with toys, Hecuba was more interested in things like clocks. Similarly to the Toymaker, she was trapped in her own pocket universe, which was stabilised by something called a grand chronometer. I'm using a bit of TARDIS wiki if you can't tell. Which was also apparently capable of trapping the Doctor's TARDIS. Once again, this would relate to the TARDIS playing up a bit. The only real issue with this is twofold. For one thing, I doubt that Toymaker and Maestro would necessarily be afraid of Hecuba for the reason that they're related and likely know each other. There is also the fact that so far, the oldest one has only been referred to as he so far. And Hecuba, in case you couldn't tell, is a woman by the looks of things. Not saying this couldn't change necessarily and they're doing a double bluff, but it does put a slight dampener on this theory. Regardless though, I would love to see her involved in the future pantheon of gods, even if she isn't the oldest one particularly. I think the idea of a god that can really manipulate time in ways that the Doctor couldn't even dream of is really fun, because that's something that the Doctor has always had an advantage in over certain other foes that Hecuba would be able to take away, and I think that would be a really interesting dynamic. Also worth noting that the Maestro refers to the Doctor as the Lord Temporal. I'm not sure whether that has any relevance, but maybe she doesn't call them Time Lords because she sees the true controller of time as Hecuba. That's a stretch there, but who knows. Our third candidate is actually two candidates. SUTEKH and the Beast. Now, why have I combined SUTEKH and the Beast together? Well, that's because both of them are kind of implied to be the devil in some form. Obviously, with the Beast, he looks more traditionally like the devil, and that's kind of implied as to what he is. But in Pyramids of Mars, it's established that another word for SUTEKH is Satan, and they are actually both voiced by the same guy. Starting off with the Beast though, he appeared in the series 2 episodes, The Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit, and what's interesting is Ncuti Gatwa himself has said that he'd like to battle the Beast.
I would love to battle the Beast, because what an ultimate villain, that is the devil.
What makes the idea of these characters being the oldest one make a ton of sense is that we've had a lot of references to hell in these recent episodes, particularly Devil's Court. When the Doctor banishes the Maestro, he refers to it as sending her back to hell. And it's notable that both the Maestro and the Harbinger, who we see with the Maestro, have red hair, which was actually a religious myth that those with red hair were associated with the devil in some way. And it would kind of make sense, right, for the oldest form of evil to be the devil themselves. It's also probably worth noting that the Doctor referred to the gods he'd met in that episode as a pantheon, so perhaps another point towards the Beast, or maybe just a use of a similar word, who knows.
How does that whole pantheon?
SUTEKH is an interesting one because there's been a lot of speculation around SUTEKH, even before these episodes came out, for reasons that I don't quite fully understand, but at the same time, I definitely think it's getting more likely. SUTEKH referred to himself as the Destroyer, leaving nothing but dust and darkness in his wake. He obviously appeared in the story Pyramids of Mars with the Fourth Doctor, and there's a couple of interesting little things that could make SUTEKH more likely. The main one being, and go with me on this, that a lot of the Season 1 trailer seems to revolve around a swarm of sand and dust clouding the Earth, and what's interesting about that is that SUTEKH is heavily braced in Egyptian mythology, hence Pyramids of Mars. So it would kind of make sense for sand to come in his wake, or at the very least dust, because, as I said, he claims to leave nothing but dust and darkness in his wake. We've got the dust bit, and we've kind of got the darkness bit, if you see that one shot of the trailer of a planet seemingly being surrounded by dust only to completely fall away as the Doctor watches on in horror. that's the sort of thing SUTEKH would definitely be able to do. I've been a long time advocate for a SUTEKH return. I even said in a really old video that one of the villains I'd love to see make a return is SUTEKH, and I think I also said the Toymaker in that video, so I got one of them. There were other reasons people suggested for SUTEKH being the one who came back, but to be honest, I'm not sure whether any of them have too much more evidence than that. But the association to the devil is enough for me to include him on this list. The only slight point against SUTEKH is that he is technically a species rather than a god. He is referred to in Pyramids of Mars as the last of the Osirians. But I mean, in fairness, the lines between alien and god are a little bit blurred in the Doctor Who universe anyway, so we'll have to wait and see on that. But let me know what you guys think. Who do you think the oldest one could be? Whatever your thoughts are, drop them down in the comments below. Let's talk about it. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, comment down below your thoughts, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you later.